could
Okay.
stand for the pledge.
There's our flag.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next is roll call. Lisa Colorado.
Here.
Warren Berger. Here, yep. John, he's absent so far. Alexandria Bobo.
Here.
Margaret Snyder.
Here.
Mike Miller.
Here.
And Loy. She told me she wouldn't be coming, so she's excused.
Nice to see you. How are you?
So
Good.
next on the agenda, well, the approval of the agenda, and I think that there's maybe a couple suggestions. One is to have the public comment possibly after the training, in case there are any public comments, so they don't have to sit through the training if they don't want to. And another was the election
The
of vice chair.
Yeah, I
You
didn't
wanna
put
do
the
that
election of the vice chair on there, so we can either do that tonight or move it to our next meeting.
So those were just two suggestions, if somebody wants to make a motion for,
Make a motion to approve the agenda. Is that what you're looking to do?
yeah, either with the changes or as is.
Oh, as amended.
Or, yeah. We have a motion, and we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All approved. So I guess we can add the election of the vice chair now. We have a motion to nominate the vice chair. No? Crickets.
Nobody wants to
Nobody
make a
wants to
motion to
nominate
throw
a
somebody
motion?
on the chair?
I'll make a motion. I would move to be Marge Schneider. I think she has the most experience of anybody on this.
But I'm an alternate.
Can I-
What?
I'm not a, I'm
Doesn't
not
matter.
I wasn't expecting that.
Nobody ever is.
I guess if we don't have any other volunteers, okay.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it's approved,
Okay,
5-0.
great.
All right, congratulations.
Thanks, Margaret. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I really was not expecting that.
Yes. Okay, and approval of minutes. I will say I just had one small typo. If you could change differ to defer, please.
I
But
will.
we can, besides that, I think, good. Do we have a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll move that.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we have approval of the minutes.
Right.
5-0.
Great.
I don't think we have a disclosure of conflict tonight, so we can skip that. How about unfinished business? Do we have any unfinished business? There's nothing on there, but, no.
None.
Okay, so we can move to new business. Do you have charts on that? Do you
Okay.
have charts on that?
Yep. Do you want me to
Okay.
bring that up?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
I have a quick announcement, though, for the board. I may not be here towards the end of the meeting, so I wanted to mention this now. Within the last month or so, the city commission has amended the planning board's responsibilities. I'm not sure if all of you saw that, but the city historically has had a number of boards to include what's called the Land Management Board. And those other boards have been basically done away with, and their responsibilities are now vested, or now part of the planning board's responsibilities. And that will become very apparent over the next month or two. We are going to be required to update and provide a report to the state for the North Thousand Island Management Plan. And that has historically been the Land Management Board's responsibility. But we're going to be, you're going to be wearing that hat. Well, you are wearing that hat now, and we'll be bringing some business before the planning board to, you can exercise wearing that hat. So it's just more of an FYI. Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming that doesn't include the Board of Adjustment, that still stays by itself.
Yeah, that's by itself.
Correct. Although if I had my way, I would have this board do everything, but currently the BOA still is a standalone, separate body.
Any other comments? But I had a question too. For clarification, is that the same as the sustainability board that they called it? Or I saw it on the agenda and I missed the actual meeting, but it was.
Yeah, it was the
same thing.
That was the second board that went away. So those two boards went away, and now you have all of those responsibilities.
And it's
When was
called,
the last time they met?
I'm sorry, what
When was
time?
the last time they met?
It's been at least 2 years.
Really?
Yes.
I think it was
Can I
when
get you
Kelsey
guys to
was
come
here.
through whatever the meaningful meeting minutes may have been, so we know what they've issued, they were dealing with?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because the staff people that supported those boards are gone. And so we're trying to pick up the pieces. But we'll do that. We'll certainly go back and look at the
Yep.
minutes and meaningful minutes and get
Maybe
them.
the clerk could do that.
Yeah, exactly. Good question. So anyway, so that announcement is a matter of housekeeping is behind us at this point. So what we have in front of us this evening is an ordinance, a recommended ordinance. This is an administratively initiated ordinance, which means staff is suggesting it. We've been approached several times by several different entities about allowing car rental facilities. And we all know what those are. I don't think we need to describe those at all. So to expand or to include areas that would allow for those uses. And while we had this open, I was going through some of the language where the facilities are currently allowed. And from a public land use policy perspective, some of them just didn't make sense. And you can see, let's go through you have up there on the board. And it says currently, car rental facilities are allowed in RM2 as a special exception and in CT1 as a permitted accessory use. That is also in the professional commercial opportunity overlay district. So those are the only places that they're allowed currently. And as far as I know, it's been many years since we've had a new facility, a rental facility want to come into this city. But currently that's where they would be allowed if one approached the city. And so while we were going through this process, I kind of thought, well, let's see, does that make sense from a land use perspective where they're currently allowed? So you can see that it's been tweaked. Rather than, in addition to allowing it in a new location, we've kind of pared back on where they are allowed. And I'm going to read the final 3 bullets. Deleting car rental facilities, we've amended it by deleting multifamily site in the list of eligible locations. So those basically apartment buildings. Does it make sense for a car rental facility to be located at an apartment building? I don't think I've ever seen one in my many years in this business. And I don't know if that's a great use to mix in with apartments from a traffic perspective, if nothing else. Pardon?
It's commercial use, and it really doesn't belong in a residential building.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. So that's one of the proposals, is to do away with that, excuse me. The second bullet, deleting multifamily and apartment sites from the list of eligible locations for this. And then the third bullet, adding commercial condo to the list of eligible locations. So we don't have that in the CT1. Corey, could you go to the zoning map for me real quick? Okay, this is the zoning map, and this hopefully this kind of sets the discussion. You can see, I'm going to use my handy dandy laser pointer here. It doesn't show up really well on the screen, but that goldenrod color right there, right here, and then down here, the third location, right down here. There's 3 areas in the city that are zone CT1. And that's where we're talking about adding currently we have it worded as adding the commercial condominium use as a permitted accessory use to transient lodging, which are hotels and motels, or commercial condominium. And these both the hotel motel and the commercial condominium have to be at least 50 units or more. And we really, as far as I know, only have one commercial condo project in CT1 over 50 units. And that is the, the name.
Cape Royal?
Cape Royal, thank you. Cape Royal building. So that would be the location currently, as it stands today, where it could be allowed as an accessory use. And what I mean by accessory is it has to be subordinate to the primary use. In this case, the commercial condo is the primary use, and a rental facility would be secondary. So in a nutshell, we're removing some of the places where we could locate a rental facility just because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, mixing it with multifamily and more of a residential use and characterized it as residential. And then we're adding commercial condo, which as far as I know there's only one location in the city that meets these parameters. So anyways, any questions?
Yeah. Do you think it makes sense for the RM2 district, even I guess in the CT district, to also have a caveat about the number of on-site parking spaces? Because, for example, I could very easily see a rental car operation working out of Hilton, but I can't see it at the Econo Lodge.
No, that's a good question, and my original draft had some more conditions that would have to be met before a rental facility would be allowed, and that was one of them. And it was worded something such as, you cannot, and I'm going to paraphrase here, you cannot, based on the number of vehicle rental parking spaces, you cannot go below a number required to service the primary use, if you will. So if they had, say if a hotel was required 250 spaces, and they had 255 spaces on the parking lot, but they wanted to use 30 of them for rental facility. Well, that wouldn't allow us. They're going below the required minimum parking off-site or off-street parking requirement. So yeah. So, but that requirement is in the off-street parking section. So there's another section of code that addresses this issue we're talking about now.
But
so I thought where they duplicated, they still are going to be required to meet that, even though it's in another section of code.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's the rationale behind adding the commercial condominium piece here? We seem to be deleting pieces, but for some reason we're adding a piece here. I'm just wondering where that's coming from.
Yeah, I was approached specifically to this property to add a rental facility.
Okay.
Because of the excess of parking. There are about 50 spaces in excess of what they're required to have. That's a massive lot, if you're familiar with it. It's a massive lot. And I think they may just look for ways to generate some additional income. And from a land use perspective, it's not that dissimilar, the commercial condo, from a car rental facility in mind. That's why we're having this meeting to talk. If the board doesn't feel like that would be appropriate, then let's talk about that. That's fine. We can, and this ordinance exhibit with the cutout or strike through and underline is staff's recommendation. If the board would like to make some changes to it, we're here to talk about that.
I just follow up on that. For me, I think the concern would be the increased traffic. We already kind of have a bit of a traffic hub there with Publix and some of the other businesses there. The increase in traffic that might come across from having a rental car company with cars going in and out.
Yes. there was, in my initial draft, I also limited the number that could be asked for as far as number of cars that could be, rather than having 50 cars, a real facility, let's limit it to 10, 15, or 20, minimize the impact of the secondary use. So, because that is an issue. Another thing that I initially threw out was, well, these things have to, on A1A, they have to be at a signalized intersection to address some of those same concerns that you have. I peeled all of that back. And if the board would like to put some of that back in, that's fine. We do.
Do Zingers count as a rental facility? Is that what they're called? What are those little?
Slingshots.
Slingshot. Zinger. Do they count as a rental car facility, or is that a whole different animal?
Yeah, that gets to some deep water. Florida statute has a definition for those three-wheelers, and they can basically go as, where you see today is they're going as a permitted accessory use to transient lodging in the CT1, I believe. There's only a few locations in the city that those currently operate.
Well, there's really only a few that have room for them.
Yes, that's another issue. So, yeah, in CT1, they're currently allowed as an accessory use to a hotel.
Just wondering, aren't we sort of enabling the vacation rental market by allowing this sort of exception into oceanfront residential areas? Because I know a number of people that live or they own second homes along the ocean. And I'm not sure they would at all like the idea of having, a vehicle rental business in a parking lot that they consider to be home. It would take away from the, from the residential nature of their, homes.
I 100% agree with you. And that is why I've eliminated the ability in these changes. That's why I've eliminated the ability for these type facilities to go into apartments, multifamily. So I think that would be consistent with what you're talking about. The only new place that they would be allowed to go in would be a commercial condo. And as far as I know, there's only one location in the city. So.
Well, unless I'm misreading this, you said this was the CT1 areas that we're talking about?
Right, they would be allowed as an accessory use to a hotel or a commercial condominium. This new language does, and actually the proposal is eliminating apartments and multifamily. So we're pulling back the ability for these things to go into more of a residential setting. Does that make sense?
I guess, but everything I'm looking at, they're residential condos. I'm not, but they're in areas that are coded CT1.
Yeah.
At least like the ones near North 4th Street, I know for sure that those are homes for people and they're condos.
Right. Well,
so maybe I'm confused about something.
Yeah, my intent was to pull the ability to locate these things away from residential areas. Like in the Section 208 RM2, you can see that number 6 is being deleted. That language is being eliminated, and that eliminates the opportunity for these facilities to go into a multifamily complex. So currently it's allowed. But what we're saying is let's delete that. We don't even want them going into multifamily. And then Section 2.10, the CT1, there again, we're deleting the ability to put one of these facilities in an apartment complex or in a multifamily facility. So we're just saying, no longer can you put these things in a residential area.
Hey, Dave?
Yes.
Excuse me. Might also talk about the number of parking spaces again. That eliminates a lot of them as well, because most condos are set up that you got 2 parking spaces per unit, and that's it. So they wouldn't be able to fit them in there.
This is probably an impossible thing to police, but who is going to make sure example, I'm just thinking about Royal Tower, which you're 100% right. They have tremendous amount of parking in front, tremendous amount of parking in the back. But a lot of the parking in the back is like that. I mean, it's
Oh,
just.
is it pretty rough shape
yeah,
back there?
it's bad shape.
I've not been back there.
Yeah, it's-
We can deal with that with matter of tomorrow, and some code folks there to take a look at the condition of the parking lot, because we have minimum maintenance and design standards that they need to meet,
And
so.
I'm sure it's done for drainage, but it doesn't negate the fact that it's like that in the back,
Yeah.
especially on the south side.
We do that in other shopping center parking lots. We'll go out, if it gets pretty bad, we'll send them out, and they'll require them to bring it up to minimum standards, so we'll look into that tomorrow for thing.
I think I'm coming back to our meeting that we had last fall where we were talking about this the first time. And I think there seemed to be a consensus that Cape Canaveral had adequate number of rental car facilities to cover our area in general. And I keep coming back to being sort of hesitant to us adding more of that in when I thought the discussion was that we were sort of coming from a place of saying, hey, we don't really see having car rental facilities beyond what we already have in the area. And I'm failing to see right now how the idea of introducing that into the Cape Royal building is going to benefit the city. That's kind of where I keep coming back to.
Isn't this is more restrictive? So it's not adding, they already have the capability.
Well,
Is that true?
it's more restrictive for the residential, and it's less restrictive for the commercial condo, which is that Cape Royal building.
What, no,
It's the same. Go ahead.
Well, right now, they don't have the ability to do that,
Right now, they do not.
so it would be the addition of the ability to be able
We
to.
would add that one property in, and I mean, it's a net reduction, if you will. We're really adding one property and eliminating, net reduction, I can tell you that. But, yeah, I mean, that's a policy question that the board needs to
Sure.
discuss and work through. The only thing I can immediately think of is it's a convenience. I mean, if we have, as you know, we have a lot of tourists down here. And if we're okay with having the tourists run to Merritt Island or go up to Cape Canaveral to satisfy this particular need or service, that's fine.
Mike?
I'm not a big fan of surface parking in general. When I was on the commission and the planning board before, we kind of went out of our way to make it attractive for people to park cars in different ways, and we built a parking lot downtown, so we didn't have a lot of little surface lots where we could have new businesses which had a higher value and use. The surf, you don't drive by there and see parking because it's all in a structure. And as big as the hotel, the Westin is, they have a parking deck, don't see it. It's not like you just driving down our main street and just seeing surface parking drives me crazy. And as a matter of fact, the Cocoa Beach Company and Ron John both front buildings on the road rather than the parking, and I think there's value in that. The other thing, from a strictly environmental standpoint, I like the parking structures because control the wash-off oil and grease and things that instead of going into the End River Lagoon went into Interceptor, and it really improved things environmentally. For all those reasons, I'm not a big fan of big parking lot. So I think you're in the right direction. We represent citizens of Cocoa Beach, and we need to be doing what I think is in their best interest. And I don't think we see a lot of this use. It'd be of people, and I think we're all just short of prohibiting them. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I think the idea of actually adding it and making it a special exception so that there were a hotel or a business that wanted it, let them come back for a lot of those other issues that you took out of here and convince us and the commissioners that there's value in it. And
I'm going to phrase that for me, hopefully, everybody, is, yeah, right now, it's either handled as a permitted use, So they don't have to come to any boards, they just
Right.
come in and get approval from the staff if they meet certain technical standards. What we're talking about is, let's have them do a special exception, so they do have to come back to the Board of Adjustment.
Compelling reason why this would be an asset to the community.
Yes, and so that would be another way to process and handle this. And it's done currently.
That falls short of saying we're prohibiting them.
Right.
But
Right.
it puts the burden of proof on them to say this is a value to the community, and here's the reason why.
I do want to add one more thing. When I was in Canaveral, probably about 6 years ago, we redid our entire permitted use table. And one of the things that we did is we eliminated the use of car rental facilities in the city. All the existing ones became non-conforming, and they will, because over time, they'll slowly go away. They can't expand. There's a number of restrictions on non-conforming uses. However, it's illegal to completely prohibit them. So what we did is we put them up on the industrial sections of town, way on the north end of the city by the port that didn't have great access. So that was the way so Canaveral has recognized a lot of the same things that Mike's talking about. These large surface parking areas are dead zones, frankly. And they do not generate ad valorem revenue for the cities and counties, wherever they may be. So yeah, they're not ideal situations, but they do give property owners an interim use as prior to redeveloping a property or something. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that out.
And I had a couple of questions. I noticed that the recommendation is to change the language from 50 or more dwelling or rental units to commercial condo.
Mm-hmm.
And is commercial condo defined anywhere, like in section 120? Like, I think it's not 100% clear. That was intentional, I guess, rename it. And so just want to make sure what that means to change the terms.
Yeah, that's a term that the property appraiser's office uses. So I don't have a definition for purposes of, how the property appraiser defines that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's used anywhere else in our code, so I was thinking we would, if we're going to stick with that, maybe add it to the
Define it,
definition, section
Sure.
120,
we can certainly do that.
and make sure that's clear. And again, I'm not sure what the difference is intended between dwelling, other than just being consistent with, what the appraisers use.
Right.
So help me out, if we were to go the direction I was suggesting, can we just change the third point under the existing CT district, instead of saying it's a permitted accessory use, say it's a special exception accessory use? And same thing down the third point, down below,
Yeah.
cross out permitted and say special exception?
Well, we can't eliminate paragraph D. I think on paragraph E under CT1, that's where the special exceptions are listed. So what we would do is we would pull it out of paragraph D and stick it into paragraph E.
Okay.
And sometimes I'm comfortable with kind of going on the fly and making changes to ordinances, but I don't think there's any huge rush.
Okay.
So if we could gather all of the input from the board, I think what we could, if the board decides this is something you want to move forward with, we could bring it back to next meeting.
Form a motion that would task you with coming back with something that reflects having these special exceptions, accessory uses?
A second.
Well, I don't know if we're done with, yes.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
I
so
thought you was
would
making
get
a
some
motion.
Discussion, no, that's good. We have a motion. I just had a couple more things. The addition of the references to the sections, so in E, there's reference section 443, and let's see, 7A, or will be 6A.
Mhm.
The sections reference 120 and 265, are those just clean up, or I didn't see anything like different, or that changes by
Those don't.
references? Is that just a clean up?
Those don't
thing?
change.
Okay,
Those are just hyperlinks to other sections of the code that would,
but they were in there before.
They were. Those are existing, that's existing language in the code.
Okay, I was showing up on the text as a change, because it's
Oh,
underlined
okay.
and different.
That shouldn't be then, I'm sorry.
Okay, I just wanted.
Yeah, I think that underlined under the section 4-43 and
It's just a-
120.
Just a hyperlink.
It's a
yeah.
link, okay.
Yeah,
Got it, thanks.
good question, though.
Um,
I didn't even think about that.
And I do like the fact that you're taking it out of the residential. That really probably never made sense. Nobody's, and I do think it's good to allow it, and it's almost somewhat self-limiting in most places, depending on the parking and
Yeah.
what's there. And
Yeah.
it is dead wasted space, so I can see why a business might want to have an opportunity or some flexibility to put something there if they could,
And I will say, let's not get caught in the trap of thinking Avis and Hertz
Yeah.
budget. There's also, I'll call it a boutique car rental facilities that will rent like exotic cars or things like that. I know we had one in Canaveral go up almost before you get to on the left-hand side. But
And Cape Royal has the traffic light right there.
they do have a
So you
traffic
can come
light.
in and out
I mean,
that section. Has to
that,
be. That has to be, is that one of the things that was
No,
in there? You said it was
currently
on a
it's not.
Oh, okay.
so.
I thought you
but
said it was in the other parking section that,
Not the reference to the traffic light.
it just so happens this one particular request was.
Yeah, and
The only one
as,
that was there.
you know, as staff, I was trying to limit the impact of these changes. So what I was doing is, I was coming up with criteria that really, let's say you start out with 100 pieces of property that are eligible for this new language. As you add conditions and criteria, has to be 5 acres at least, and it has to be on a A1A. It has to be on a signalized intersection. It has, you start reducing the number of potential sites for these things to occur at. And the 50 unit condominium, really, there's only one. That's why I peeled back all of those other requirements. I thought that was going to really restrict it just to one option.
So
But
technically, the fact that all that parking is there, at one point was probably approved to have that many cars coming and going out of there anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not really a change other than the fact that we're not used to having any traffic because it's an empty.
Right.
Most empty, or a lot of empty now.
yeah, theoretically, at one point, the traffic network was, all of that traffic impact
Yeah.
was kind of baked into the approval.
The Cape Oil has 2 entrances though, doesn't it? It has one that it has to a light and then the other one goes straight out onto A1A,
Yeah, further
right?
north, yeah.
Right.
Is that right turn only?
Pardon?
Is that right turn only? I don't remember.
I don't know if it's right in, right
You go both.
I don't know.
I think it would be very helpful, at least I know it would be to me, if the next time we review this, the parking scope of things.
We can do that.
What would be the formula for the size of such a facility?
Well, right now, there is no, the formula, kind of backing into a formula is, it would be the excess parking on a particular piece of property. And so it's going to really be case by case. And that may lend itself towards what Mike was talking about, the special exception process, because that would be one of the things that the board could, or the Board of Adjustment could look at when they're considering the special exception request. But help me come up with some new language. Is it the consensus of the board that you would like any requests for these facilities to go through the special exception process? I know we've got a motion and a second on that issue.
Yeah, I would be okay with that.
Okay.
I'm concerned about the traffic in
Yeah.
that area.
Yeah.
We're seeing heightened traffic definitely during the winter season, and now introducing, however many cars that would end up being into that situation, especially for that other entrance that doesn't have a light. I'm just concerned about the amount of traffic that you're going to see coming in and out of there.
Doesn't that also service the condo back there?
The side road does.
Yeah, I thought so.
On the south side of the property?
Yeah.
Actually, it'd be on the north side, right? When you come out the north entrance to the building, which is the non-traffic light entrance.
Right.
Doesn't that meet the road coming back from coming out from the condo also? So in other words, that is not just, I'm almost positive it also,
You think it serves another property, at least another property,
yeah, I think it serves a condo back there.
that northern driveway?
Yeah, I think
I
so.
know the Southern Road services the
Oh, yeah.
condo in the back
That
there.
goes all
But
the
there's
way to-
another one, there's another one.
I know what you're talking about.
Does it require a change like this? Would it require notifying the residents that are nearby? I can't remember what that
Us-
is.
If it went to a special exception, that's the
Would.
process you
So that would
followed,
probably be a good thing.
that would require
that would add
mail-out
it.
notice to 500 feet, 300 feet? 300 feet, so yeah, all the condo owners would get notified.
Can people, could they, I don't know what the restrictions or allowances are for converting part of a parking lot that's maybe not used, fully used, to make it beach parking? Like, like during, I don't know, like, some places have taken their parking lots and the
Yeah.
hours that they're not in use for the
Yeah.
business.
Quite a few right
Yes,
here
quite a
in Orlando.
few. Can be that? I mean,
They
is
could,
that allowable at places? So again, theoretically, they could fill the lot with cars if they wanted to go that route.
yeah, they could, that's really the
I'm not
private market.
advocating it, I'm
and-
just saying, I'm not sure we're making it any, I don't know that this makes it worse as far as the way the traffic and cars could be.
It's the same thing with the Hilton,
Exactly.
same situation.
Yes, it's already potential for having other cars in
Yeah,
there.
theoretically, they could fill up that parking lot today.
Yes.
With all the condo units in there. So, yeah.
So I do think that it's a good idea to go through the special exception. I mean, me personally,
Okay.
to kind of get that extra step.
You raised a point a minute ago, which I think we ought to consider as well. This is an industry that's in transition. There's now a company where you can go online, and it's kind of like an Airbnb. You can rent somebody's car who maybe lives in Saddle Beach, and they'll take it to a site. You can pick the car you want, what the price will be and everything, it just has to be a pickup point for it. And that would have less impact than having a lot of cars stored there if it was just a pickup point for essentially what's this online.
I've used that facility
Oh, you have?
traveling.
I have as well.
Great.
Yeah,
Have you?
it's great. Turo is one of them. and
Yeah,
there's-
that's
the one
it.
that's
I couldn't
the
think of the
one,
name. That's
Yeah,
it.
there's a few of them.
Yeah.
Is there any restriction, I mean, if something like that were allowed? Because I've seen, car rental places that are, well, they're covered. And, if you go through Cape Canaveral, you'll pass by a fence and there's a bunch of cars behind it and all that, and just kind of looks commercial. But it's kind of like, once you make an exception, are they limited by how they can set it up, what it looks like, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, that would be, you could add some aesthetic criteria to the ordinance. Right now, there's nothing in there, but you could add aesthetic criteria that they would have to meet, and that as part of the special exception process. That would be something that could be discussed and agreed upon between the applicant and the, in this case, Board of Adjustment. Yeah.
Are there any other comments? I guess we have a motion on the floor. and a
Could you restate the motion one more time, please?
That we would request that staff modify the proposal they have now to add a special exception. Yeah, in the appropriate way. That's, I guess, we'd leave it up to you guys, however it
Okay.
should be worded.
And I'm about allowing it into the CT1 in the commercial condo space. Is that a concern of the?
I have, I don't know if everybody else feels the same.
Yeah,
but-
yeah, that's an important point.
Yeah,
And
right.
so if I'd like to get some feedback from the board on that.
There's only one commercial condo. Is that the one on Ocean Boulevard?
It's the one I've been talking about, Cape
Royal.
Cape Royal.
Oh, Cape Royal, and the one down there is not a commercial
It's
condo,
not
it's
50
rental.
units. Yeah,
Okay.
Because it has to be over 50 units as well, right?
that's currently worded.
We had a motion and a second. Do we want to vote on yet for bringing it back? And we go to make a motion maybe for if you
And it would come back
want it
with,
to be as a special exception or?
Yeah, I'd make that one motion, and then make his concern a second motion.
I'll
Okay.
have another question. I mean, is there any sort of allowable cap total for the city?
If the board would like to add that as a criteria, then yes, we can do that. Right now, I don't have it because it's really going to be a function of available parking. It'll kind of self-burn itself, but if that's something the board would like to add, that's within your purview.
I do think it would be good to phrase it so it's not just rental, but maybe these drop-off, whatever that's called. I'm not sure what definition or the terminology
We'll
for
work,
that
Garrett.
thing, just rentals. And,
That might get tricky just because it's private renters, I think, on those apps.
Yeah.
So there might be some liability things going on there. I don't know,
if
but
it's,
We
yeah,
can-
no, but.
We can draft a broad definition to
Something.
get those new services.
Or
looked at.
internet provider.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Whatever they call that. And then, again, to maybe add or look into the commercial condo definition.
Yes,
Make
we'll-
sure that people know what we're referring to.
That's a good point, thank you. We'll include that. We'll amend the ordinance to include a definition for commercial condo.
You got a motion on the floor.
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No?
Motion for exception or to bring it back?
Special exception.
And to bring it back.
Yeah, that's,
It has to come back,
yeah, that's assumed.
probably, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
All right?
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate everybody's thoughts and suggestions. It's
I
awesome.
thought this was going to be easy, huh?
When is it ever easy? What's easy?
Yeah, exactly. So I
Okay,
am riding
thanks,
an
Dave.
old Harley Davidson this evening, and I need to get home before it gets dark, because those things are notoriously horrible. Not like these fancy bikes this guy rides.
Be safe.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your
Thank you.
comments and thoughts.
Drive
See you,
safe.
David.
Thanks.
We did move public comment forward, but there's no public comment, so we'll just go right into
one
the
here.
training.
Yeah. Corey handed me do we get it pulled up, maybe? Yeah, I anticipated you all would breeze through the proposed ordinance. So I'm like, oh, this might be a nice meeting to have some training, but you guys went a little longer than I thought, so I will try to make it brief here. I know most of you have received this training before, but obviously you all are not required to go through the full 4-hour ethics training that our city commissioners are. However, the rules for the board that the board passed back in 2021, which we'll have to update now that the board has new duties, does mandate that the board does have to go through periodic training. I break up my trainings into 2 separate PowerPoints. I think they're really quick and fun, informative. They're not designed to give you all every bit of knowledge that you need, to go through all these issues, but it will give you enough of a reminder to help you issue spot, so that if something happens in real life, you can go, oh yeah, I remember when the attorney mentioned something about this, I'm not going to talk to this person. Or, oh, I remember about conflicts of interest, I'm going to give the attorney a call 5 days before the meeting instead of 5 minutes before the meeting, so we can make sure we have a quorum to hear, what's coming before the board. So with that in mind, if there's any questions during the meeting, just shout at me. No need to wait. There's some hypos in here that I like for people to, join in with me on. So just, if you see an issue, when you spot it, just go ahead and shout it out, and we'll get through this pretty quickly. And Corey, I don't know why, oh, there we go. Very good. So this first PowerPoint cover 3 brief, points. We go over the Sunshine Law first. Next, we'll go over public records law and Florida statutes, and then we'll talk very briefly about voting conflicts, which I think for you all, since you guys are superstars with the first 2 points, we'll focus mainly on voting conflicts, because that does tend to come up time to time. So what is the Florida Sunshine Law, right? We talk about the Sunshine Law all the time. What are the actual legal provisions? Well, what is it intending to do? To provide access to the public to governmental meetings, right? We don't want meetings like this where decisions are being made by public bodies to be behind closed doors. Folks, according to the Florida legislature, have the right to know what their public elected and appointed officials are doing, right, when they are conducting business for the city. It applies to elected and appointed boards, so it applies to you all as well. And sort of the black letter law that I like to tell people to try to remember, whether or not a board meeting is open to the sunshine or not, all meetings which official acts are taken or public business is transacted or discussed shall be open and noticed to the public. Again, and this is where folks get into some trouble, because a lot of times we hear about folks who get an article on the front page of the paper because, oh, they violated the Sunshine Law. Well, why did they violate the Sunshine Law? Well, they had a meeting between 2 or more members of the same board at a location that wasn't open or noticed to the public, right? They're having some backroom deal down at a club somewhere, or, oh, there's an email chain between 2 or more board members discussing how they're going to vote on an item before it comes before the board or commission, right? The law says those email conversations, those text conversations, those conversations at Publix, those are meetings under the law, so you have to have them here at a location where we have the meeting noticed to the public. The only other, small thing I'll point out to you all is that it's a legal requirement to take minutes of all the meetings. That's why it's so important that you all review the minutes and approve them. We want to make sure that we're keeping accurate minutes of all of the meetings, and those have to be open for public inspection. Again, advisory boards such as the planning board is covered by the Sunshine Law, even if you're making non-binding recommendations to the elected board, the city commission. All right, our first typo. Mary and Jim are members of a planning and zoning board in a small Florida town. One morning, Mary tells her neighbor, Sue, who happens to be the town planner, that she is not going to vote to approve a petition to rezone a coastal property at the upcoming meeting. Mary then asks Sue to let other board members know of her disapproval and her intent to vote no. Later that day, Jim calls Sue, the planner, to ask about the process for rezonings in the town's coastal areas. Sue tells Jim it's not looking good for that one rezone. Mary said she would never vote for it. What are the issues?
Thank God it was Mary and not Cora.
What are the issues?
Mary should never have asked Sue to tell other board members what she was thinking, and she should have never even told Sue what she was thinking.
That's exactly right. But what if someone says, well, Sue's not a member of the board. The Sunshine Law only applies to 2 or more members of the same board. What's your retort?
I think it's pretty clear that Sue is an employee of the municipality and should be treated like another, and especially she's a planning department employee, especially a planning department employee. She should be treated just like it was a member of the planning board.
That's exactly right. And we get that from actually case law and from Florida statutes that prohibits board members from using non-board members as liaisons to communicate between each other. And that's because that would frustrate the whole purpose behind the Sunshine Law in the first place. Why have a law and why enforce a law that requires these decisions to be made at meetings if we're just going to allow folks to, launder their discussions through a third party? That's exactly right. So the same thing happens, and sometimes, folks will try to get around this, but we really got to make sure we don't try to do it. But, oh, how's the board feeling on this one matter? And, oh, do you think we got the votes for the rezone on Monday? Those sorts of comments can be taken in the wrong way, and certainly, as the Florida Attorney General has made clear this week, these are the sorts of things that his office is going to be looking at more closely moving forward with public entities.
Isn't it true that you can express your opinion publicly, you just can't have conversation with another board member?
Yeah.
The one by the apple is what Becca used to call it.
Yeah, that's precisely right. So we get this question all the time. Hey, I want to post on my campaign, my Facebook page, or I want to, I'm talking to my neighbor and I want to let them know how I feel about this issue. If they happen to talk to someone else about this who might be on the board, am I going to get in trouble? And the answer is no, right? And that's really grounded in the fact that elected and appointed officials have to be responsive to the people they represent. So you're allowed to have conversations with folks about what you feel about a particular issue. We just want to make sure that it's not with the intent of communicating that to another board member. So, great point. Meetings. This is an often overlooked part of this, and hopefully we don't have any hot issues this year where this becomes an issue, but we have to make sure that our meetings are in locations that are accessible to the public. Well, we're in one now, right? It has to be of adequate size. It certainly is tonight. And we can't discriminate or restrict access to the public on any other basis. This comes up a lot. I saw actually a YouTube video from a First Amendment auditor recently where he was denied access to a public meeting in another jurisdiction, another state, but they said, you have to sign into the meeting to get into the meeting, right? You got to put your name and address down to attend the public meeting. Well, that's prohibited, right? We can't require people to do that as a condition of them participating in a public meeting. So that's sort of the thing that we're talking about. Or we can't say, oh, you're not a resident of the city of Cocoa Beach. You can't come into our meetings. Oh, you're a member of the news media. You're not allowed in here. Those are the sorts of conditions that the city cannot put up to prohibit folks from participating in public meetings. You all have adopted, or prior boards before you have adopted, reasonable rules for the orderly conduct of meetings. We have an agenda, we have a process, we adhere to parliamentary procedure, public comments limited to 3 minutes, things like that. Florida law says all of that is okay. And another note, and hopefully we don't have any thing that brings in the news cameras, but the board cannot, or the city cannot ban non-disruptive videotaping, tape recording, or photography at public meetings. So sometimes meetings I'm at, there's someone with a nice camera walking around taking very nice pictures of everyone. We can't prohibit that as long as it's not disruptive to the meeting. Right to public comment. Might need to update this because it's not a newer section of Florida statutes, but it's just now there's a statutory right to be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard on a proposition before a board or commission, which just means that now every board has a public comment period during their meetings. And for the purposes of this board, we don't really have to say whether it's before or after an item, but it is okay that our public comment, our general public comment comes after the item because usually everything that comes before this board is a public hearing. So public comment's allowed as a part of the process anyways, for rezonings, things like that.
Who sets the 3-minute limit?
That's a rule that has been adopted by the city. This board can amend it. You can make it 5 minutes, you can make it 10 minutes. Of course, you might have an issue that does in fact fill up the room, and if everyone has 10 minutes to speak and they're filibustering, we're not gonna get out of here till 1 in the morning. Which I've been in a couple of planning board meetings in other cities that have gone to 1 in the morning. Not because of that, but people like to get out of their head what they're thinking. One of the ways to just get in front of that is a lot of times if there's a group that comes and they all have the same issue in mind that they want to talk about, they can designate a leader. And maybe the board will say, we'll give you 15 minutes to flesh out your group's arguments, right, against this or for this proposal. And that's completely fine too. And just to clarify, again, it doesn't really happen for this board because most of what you do, there's a public hearing attached to it. But the opportunity to be heard doesn't really need to happen at the same board or commission meeting. It can happen after decisions been made. The county, for instance, their meetings are very long. They have a lot of agenda items. They have multiple public comment periods throughout the meeting, and it's on a first come, first served basis. So they might have gone by your item by the time you get an opportunity to address the board. But that's okay. That's completely fine. We just talked about this. Penalties. Don't commit a sunshine law violation. Don't talk to another member of the board about business that's reasonably likely to come before your board. I would say to you all, don't talk about any planning, zoning related items. It's probably easier for you all not to talk about specific items because you don't know that they're coming until an agenda anyways, and then it's pretty clear you're not supposed to talk about it. But just keep that in mind. And it is if you do it unintentionally, it can be a non-criminal infraction. If you do it intentionally, it is a crime, and people do go to jail for sunshine law violations. So keep that in mind. But you all are a great group, so I don't have to go through this too much. One of the legal effects of there being a sunshine law violation is that whenever the action was that was the result of a sunshine law violation is void ab initio, as opposed to voidable. You don't have to go to court to undo the rezoning that was procured through a sunshine law violation. It is automatically void ab initio. And the legislature did that so that no one gets the bright idea to do it, because in the end, it's not going to matter anyways, right? We're just going to void whatever decision was made. That was a very quick run through. I'm sure for a lot of you, that was just a brief reminder of the sunshine law. Just remember, all meetings have to be open and noticed to the public. Email communications, text communications, those are meetings, right? If you're talking about board business. So we want to make sure we don't do that. It only applies to you and another board member, 2 or more board members. You can talk to staff, you can talk to me anytime you like. Don't use us to launder your ideas to other folks, because we won't let you. We'll remind you of this recording, and it is something that I think the current state attorney general has made very publicly clear that they were looking into a lot of sort of public corruption and things like that in local governments, and this is something I think they're going to key on. And I actually heard on NPR this morning that they're going to start enforcing these sorts of statutes, or that's their plan, rather. So just keep that in your mind. Public records law. This is important because because Florida has probably the strictest public records laws in the whole country. Provides a right of access to records to state, local government officials, as well as private entities acting on their behalf. That means all the emails I get from Corey or from you all, or from citizens about Cocoa Beach business, city attorney business, those emails are all public records. All the text messages I get, those are all public records. And it's embedded actually in the Florida Constitution, which is unique. So the thing you need to know about that is that the only exceptions to the public records laws in Chapter 119 are those established by law or those established in the Constitution. So what does that mean? Or before we do that, let's define what a public record is. You can see here, it's just about anything. And the important part here is this last clause, made or received pursuant to law or ordinance or in connection with the transaction of official business by any agency. That's a mouthful, so we sort of break it down a little bit. And the Supreme Court did as well, the Florida Supreme Court. It's really just any material made or received by an agency in connection with official business which are used to perpetuate, communicate, or formalize knowledge. Doesn't matter if it's in its final form, if it's a draft 1, draft 2, draft 3, they're all public records. Unless, of course, there is an exemption that applies. Notably, and this question comes up a lot, there is no exemption for, Garrett, this would be really embarrassing if I had to produce this. Sorry, bud. No exception there, okay? This is the main question I get from my planning boards that I cover. Emails do count as public records if they're received by public officers or employees in connection with official business. And so the question I get all the time is, hey, Garrett, my neighbor knows that I'm on the planning board, and she texted me about this item that's coming before the board at the next meeting. Is that text a public record? And I tell folks, to be on the safe side, yeah, it probably is a public record. So what does that mean? Well, you're in possession of it. It's on your phone, right? And you have the responsibility as an office holder in the city of Cocoa Beach to be the custodian of that record until you shift that burden to someone else. And I love burden shifting. I hate holding records. I don't want to do it. right? Because then when people need them, I don't want to have to dig through my phone to find them. And then I can't find it, and then we got problems, which hasn't happened because what I do is I take a screenshot of those things, right? Or if someone, God forbid, sent something to my personal email, if they ever found it, well, it would be forwarded to my work email, and then I'd forward it on to the city. I'd say, hey, Corey, I got this text about our upcoming meeting. Can you make sure the clerk gets it? Now you are no longer the custodian of that record. You've pushed that burden off onto the city where it belongs. All right?
If any email came from like Corey or you to the board and there were replies or questions or something, would that be your record to keep?
There, yeah,
It was
If
all,
I send it to you, if you send anything back to me, then I would
It's-
have to
you
keep
would
that
have
as well.
yeah, and the city retains all that anyways.
I thought so.
The issue would be is if, you had another string that was from, some group that tried to reach out to you or,
yeah.
or something like that. It mainly comes up with text messages. And that's where it gets most folks, particularly, and I don't know if I've had this conversation with all of you, but it is my strong preference and my recommendation that nobody use their cell phone during meetings, particularly to text during meetings, because you might be in the middle of a rezone and your phone goes buzz buzz and everyone hears it in the audience, and you look down and you're typing away. Well, who are you communicating with? What are you communicating? What got sent to you? Does this have to do with the meeting, right? And we'll learn here in a minute that in providing public records, what the law says, and I'll read it, every person who has custody of a public record shall permit the record to be inspected and copied by any person desiring to do so at any reasonable time under reasonable conditions and under supervision of the custodian of the public records or the custodian's designee. So in that hypothetical, someone texts you, it's probably your spouse or maybe your neighbor asking you when you're gonna get down to 4th Street for the game or whatever. And so you're texting them back, oh, this meeting will be over in 10 minutes. Well, if the attorney for an applicant comes up after the meeting, maybe it's an adverse decision, and they bang on the dice, I wanna see that text. I wanna see what you said. Well, do you have to allow them to inspect a public record or a potential public record? Well, what if you were texting about the meeting? Oh, this meeting really stinks. I hate it. This applicant is a real jerk, right? And then, well, that's certainly a communication made or received in connection with official business because you're communicating knowledge, right, that you gained through the meeting. And well, certainly you should allow them to inspect it because that's required under Florida law, right? They're a person desiring to do so. You're right there, your phone's right there, they're right in front of you. It's a reasonable time for them to request to see it. And, if the attorney's in the room, certainly the attorney can review it to see if it's a public record. The time to allow inspection is then. And that's happened before, not to me, but to our managing partner, Wade Vos, at a meeting where someone sent something that was inappropriate. And it was embarrassing, but there's no exception for that, right? So I like to tell people, not to mess around with creating public records. That's what we want to avoid. Phone calls are not public records. So, if you have something to say or a question to ask and you don't really want a paper trail or you don't want to have to explain your question or whatever, call Corey, call the team, call our office, right? So.
Just a quick question. So any notes we take during a meeting, if you're jotting down a thought on something that's being talked about or you're trying to get clarification, that's a public record?
So it depends. And I should include the notes slide here, because this question does come up quite a bit. What we're looking for is any document, or for your purposes here, any document that, and it's up on the slide here, that perpetuates, communicates, or formalizes knowledge. So brief notes to yourself that you take down during a meeting to remind you to ask a question or something like that, those are not going to be public records. Or that portion of it won't be a public record. What I recommend folks do is bring a blank notepad with you and jot your notes down there, because if you come to City Hall and you pick up a paper agenda and you start jotting notes down on the agenda, someone may say, oh, well, I'm entitled to see the whole record because it is a public record. You picked it up from the city. That's the definition of a public record, right? Well, no, not the notes part, and then we argue about it. But yeah, just bring a little blank notepad and jot your notes down. The caveat to that is if you write some notes down to yourself and then you tap Mike's shoulder during the meeting and you point to your notepad, well, what are you doing at that point? You're communicating knowledge. So at that point, that record goes from being just some notes to a public record. And again, you now possess a public record that's nowhere else because you just wrote it down. Now you got to rip it out, you got to scan it, and you got to send it to the city. That's what the law says. Usually with my little notes that I jot down, I don't show them to anyone. When the meeting's over, I close up my notepad. I never have anything on the top sheet of my notepad, and then no one sees what I wrote down. It's not a public record. I go home, I throw it away. So that's something to keep in mind. Keep your notes to yourself, kind of thing. Voting conflicts. This is the number one question I get from my lower boards, from my planning boards, Board of Adjustments. We get voting conflicts in section 112.3143. It applies to public officers in a collegial body. That is you. What is a voting conflict? I'll go through this very quickly because I know many of you know it already. Local elected or appointed officers may not vote on any measure which would inure to your special private gain or loss, or any measure which you know would inure to the special private gain or loss of those four categories: a principal, a parent organization or a subsidiary of a corporate principal by which you're retained, a relative, or a business associate. This is pretty self-explanatory. Who's a principal, an employer, a client of a legal, accounting, insurance, or other professional practice, a corporation for which an officer serves as a compensated director. So if you were an attorney and you had a client who had a matter of business before the board that you know would inure to their special private gain or loss, man, they're going to make a lot of money if they can rezone this property and sell it, well, you'd have a conflict, right? Same thing if it's your employer. If it's your relative, the definition of relative for the voting conflict is much smaller than the definition for other ethics laws, like the anti-nepotism law, interestingly. Here it only applies to those folks. Business associate, again, and you guys will get these slides after the meeting, so if you want to review them and ask questions or keep them on for issue spotting, of course you can. Key question, if you want to know if you have a conflict with a business associate, are they engaging in a common commercial or entrepreneurial pursuit? And is the relationship current, ongoing business relationship? This is what I like to focus on, and this is usually where most of the analysis comes from. When you call me and ask if you have a conflict, it's you've already identified that, hey, I know this person really well, or they're a relative, or I do business with them, or they're a client of mine. Do I have to recuse myself? And the answer is, well, what is your client going to gain if they get this approved or disapproved, right? Because if they don't get their rezone, well, they might lose out on an investment opportunity, right? The voting conflict does not apply to all situations that might result in a gain or loss. It has to be special. What do we mean? It requires an economic benefit or harm that will inure to the officer, his or her relative, business associate, or principal. So what do we look at when we try to determine whether or not the gain or loss is special? Well, how many people are affected, right? You can't have a special gain or loss if everyone's winning or everyone's losing, right? What is the relative benefit or harm when compared to other members of the affected class? Is the gain or loss remote or speculative? That's less likely here when we're dealing with land use issues. Is this merely a preliminary or procedural measure? And there I'll just say, if you recuse yourself or you have a voting conflict and you can't vote on an item, at the next meeting when the chair calls for an approval of the minutes, you can absolutely vote to approve the minutes. Because you're not having anything to do with the measure, it's just a procedural matter of approving minutes from the prior meeting, right? So the main thing we look at is what is the size of the affected class? And for the planning board, this is real easy because you all consider two types of things, really, that come before you. Legislative matters, and we'll talk about this in a minute more. Legislative matters, which is where you are creating new law, and quasi-judicial matters where you're applying a set of facts to existing law, right? What you all did tonight was legislative, right? David came and said, hey, I need your input on this language here for this ordinance. Well, let's talk about what the law should be, right? We're not talking about how it's going to affect anyone in particular, really. It's just more, how are we going to legislate with this particular issue? Compare that to an application for a rezoning. Well, we know what the law for a rezone is, right? We know the criteria that has to be considered. We're applying whatever the applicant brings us to the law, right? That's quasi-judicial. We're really only affecting the applicant. It may be a small group of folks around the applicant. So on most legislative items, you will never have a conflict. Unless it's, the legislation's very narrowly targeted to one or two properties in the city. Again, the larger the class, the smaller the chance of the special gain, the smaller class, the larger the chance of the special gain. So if you do have a voting conflict, hey Garrett, I have a client that's coming before us. They have a piece of agricultural land that they want to do, get a rezone to heavy industrial. They're going to make a great deal of money developing this property. What should I do? Do I need to abstain from voting? Yes, you do. So what do? The first thing you do is you abstain from voting. You don't vote. You disclose the conflict orally prior to the vote, and you file what's called a Form 8B within 15 days. It's a one-page form from the Florida Department of Ethics. We'll provide it to you. What happens at the next meeting, it gets included into the minutes and accepted by the city, and it'll be on the record, essentially, just so folks know about it and so that we comply with state law.
So what happens if there's a conflict of interest and you can't have a quorum, say you're taking a vote, then what happens? How's that handled?
Yeah, the item would have to be continued until we do have a quorum. So that's why I was saying before, it's really important that when you do get a copy of your agenda, you review it just to see who it, concerns. And then even if you think there might be a conflict, you're pretty sure there's not, but hey, let me call the attorney just to make sure. And we can go through the analysis in usually about a minute or two. And then I can get on the horn with Corey and say, hey, Corey, I think we got someone who's conflicted out. Please make sure we have a quorum before we bring everyone down to City Hall. And I live down the road, so it's not a big deal, but sometimes I drive many hours to get to places. And
Special gain is the real important issue there, because in 10 years of service here, we always disclose things. So just ask the attorney, should I recuse myself?
Yeah.
In 10 years, nobody ever recused themselves. It would have to be a really special gain.
yeah, and it would have to be someone that falls into one of those four categories, right? Usually it's, a family member.
If your
maybe-
house is in an area that you made a decision in terms of zoning that might benefit so many people, it's not special to you, then that's not a conflict.
Certainly, yeah, and usually the best example I give is if someone on the Board or Commission owns a piece of property that's neighboring to the property where there's going to be a large increase in the use of the property or something like that, or maybe there's going to be not a speculative, but more or less how it's going to affect your property values. I think all of you are pretty savvy enough to understand that. That's a situation where you'd have to recuse yourself. It doesn't happen too often. A lot of properties around town, so it doesn't happen too often. But a quick call to the attorney certainly does help. And I like talking to folks, so we'll get to chat for a little bit.
I know you have to abstain from voting and disclose prior to the discussion, but can you participate in the discussion? Or you should not do either?
That's a good question.
So we recommend that appointed officers, first, they have to publicly disclose their conflict before participating in discussion on the matter. You can participate in discussion. That's up to you. Recommend perhaps maybe you don't, because that might invite some argument from the applicant. That is opposed to like a county commission. they can have their brother with a big, before the commission with a big waste management contract where their family member is going to make millions of dollars, and they can spend the whole meeting talking about how great this contract is, and then right before the vote, oh, and by the way, this is, the applicant or the contract's with my brother's company. And then they vote. You all have to disclose it before you even say a word on the item. So that's why we disclose conflicts at the top of the meeting, right?
Do you, in the disclosure of the conflict, are you just disclosing the fact that you have a conflict, or do you disclose the nature of the conflict?
Yeah, you can disclose the nature of the conflict if you like. I'm conflicted out on this because, it's my employer who's coming before the
Got it,
board.
okay.
Right, and I've discussed with the attorney that it's appropriate for me to recuse myself. For this, I'm going to choose to step away from the dais just so I don't, I want to be impartial, right? That's what most people would do. Now, of course, you can stay up there if you'd like, but that's up to each board member.
Yeah, I was on the Board of Adjustments one time, and someone had to recuse themselves, but were allowed to throw in the opinion, and the way I looked at it was, since they had influence, they were still allowed to put that opinion out there. and
Absolutely.
thinking, which I think swayed the board.
Yeah, it's permitted, but, everyone knows, of course, about the conflict before they say anything on the matter, which is why the statute requires it. It's a little less prohibitive with elected officials, but that's just what we have to deal with you guys. Let's see here. So what if you just don't want to vote on something because it's a sticky political issue? Well, not so fast. Section 286.012 requires members of a collegial body, that's you, to vote when present at a meeting and prohibits abstaining except when, quote, there is or appears to be a possible conflict of interest. So what we want to make sure is that you all were appointed for a reason. You represent people of the city. Your viewpoint is important, so you ought to vote on matters that come before the commission. Unless you have a conflict, you have the option of abstaining in the event there is or appears to be a possible conflict of interest. So maybe you're not conflicted out by law, but it's so very close that even participating in the decision, nevertheless voting on it, would perhaps reflect poorly on the decision or on you or whatever. We can always talk about that before the meeting, but we generally tell folks that they should vote.
But you can have discussions where you're getting information. It was not uncommon if you had a major project that came before either the planning board or the commission. You might be contacted by the applicant's attorney and even him and gain information about the project. As long as you didn't discuss it with somebody else, then that was, I always disclosed that I had done that, by the way.
So that's a great point to bring up, because we're going to talk about that in a second, because it came up with the Board of Adjustment, and that's what really spurred me to say, hey, Corey, we need to have some training. Of having a voting conflict is different than having an ex parte communication with an applicant. A voting conflict is just a matter of fact, right? You have a relative or employer or business associate who has a special private gain or loss that is attributable to the matter before you. If so, you're out, right? You got to orally disclose it. You got to sign the form before you leave. We put it on the next agenda for the next meeting, right? That's all by operation of law. Ex parte disclosures, we really shouldn't have them. We'll talk about this right now. Really shouldn't have them, and if you do have them, yeah. Actually, I can do it from here, maybe? Yeah, look at that. Boom. Government efficiency. So we really shouldn't have ex parte communications, and we'll talk about why in a moment. But those are distinct, you can't have a voting conflict as a result of an ex parte communication. If that makes sense. You have to have a special private gain or loss to have a voting conflict.
A lot of times we voted on things and there were 5 people and all said the same thing. I visited the site.
Yeah.
I've met with the attorney and the applicant. And I've not shared that information with anybody else. And all 5 would
Yeah, and
make that claim.
And we'll talk about why, that happens sometimes, but yeah, at least for this board, it's good not to have ex parte communications, especially with quasi judicial matters. But before I go on, if there's anyone who has any questions about sunshine law, public records, voting conflicts, like I said, we're going to distribute these to you all. These are very abridged versions of my normal 4-hour PowerPoint. I'll also include a link to this, the AG's office puts it out every year. It's called the Sunshine Manual. It's a great resource. It's hundreds of pages long. It goes through every conceivable question you could have. It has case law citations, AG citations, everything that you need. It's updated yearly. It's a great resource. I go to it probably once a week just to double check my understanding of what's going on. So I'll include a link to that in my email to Corey. He can shoot that out to you all, just, for a Sunday afternoon reading, if you're bored. I know the weather's been so beautiful lately, it's hard to stay inside. Yes?
It's not really directly here, but I've been thinking about this since you started. When you do a FOIL request for you want information, or when you receive it, is there a timetable that you have to respond to that?
Yeah, reasonable time.
So there isn't.
Yeah. Well, if it's a request for one document and it takes the agency, 2 months, that's not reasonable. If, there's a request made and the city has to go through thousands of documents, it has to go through emails of past employees from decades ago, or, or if there's a significant amount of redactions that have to take place, it might take a couple of weeks, it might take a month. And oftentimes in those situations, you communicate with the applicant. You make sure you understand what they're requesting. You write them back, acknowledge receipt of their request, make sure you know what they want. Let them know it might take a little bit because of what's involved. And then oftentimes you got to charge those people up front, or get a deposit because of the staff time associated with the request. You can charge for it in certain instances. So, but yeah, for public records requests, it's a reasonable amount of time. I usually start getting on people after a couple days. If it's a small request, larger ones, maybe a week, 2 weeks, but yeah, the law says a reasonable amount of time. Now, to inspect a record, that's even more fact dependent. The hypo with the text and, you're right there, your phone's right here, the attorney's right here to see if it's a public record or not. The reasonable time to allow for inspection of that record is right then, really. You can't delay that for 2 weeks. So that's kind of a distinction there between those two things. But yeah, it just depends on the nature of the request. All right, parliamentary procedures. So the second PowerPoint mainly focuses on operation and what you all experience every meeting. I will probably, if you guys don't want it, I'll probably skip through the parliamentary procedures. I mean, you all know how to go through an agenda, right? We know how to make motions, we know how to second motions. Particularly when there's an applicant in front of the board and the staff has a recommended motion. A lot of times it's appropriate just to read the motion, or if it's an alternative motion, you can make one up on the fly, but it's important to be clear when you're making motions. Say what you actually mean, right? Don't just assume folks know what you mean when you make a motion. That way folks aren't confused, and we have to take really good minutes. We have to understand what the motion is. So that's more important with really formal quasi-judicial requests. Legislative items like we had today, everyone in the room who's going to work on the revisions you all authorize know precisely what it is that you all are looking for. So, it's okay that we had some back and forth. We had a motion in a second, then we had more discussion. Usually in a quasi-judicial setting, I might rein that in. I might say, it's not appropriate time to make a motion yet. Or, I might say, Chair, we have a motion in a second. Let's have final discussion on the matter unless there's other questions. I might prompt you all to be a little more formal about how we go through all that. But for something like this, it's really more beneficial to have a free flow of comments and suggestions because, communicate ideas better that way. So we'll go through this pretty briefly. We all know why we have procedure during meetings. We have an agenda. It's required by law that before any meeting of the board, you have to have an agenda. Generally, like 99% of the time, you cannot go off book, right? You have to only consider what's on the agenda. You can't consider something that hasn't been publicly noticed. In very, very rare instances, is it appropriate to add things onto the agenda at the meeting? But it does happen from time to time. Those are usually administrative items or emergency items, but this board will never have anything like that. Let's see. Yeah, like I said, our agenda provides that you all can amend the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. You can approve the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. We can change the order of events to help folks out so they don't have to sit through presentations like this for public comment. But we want to make sure we only address one item at a time, which you all have no problem doing. This is sort of driven for new folks, so I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. Not all items require you all to make a motion, right? During your commission comments at the end of the meeting, you might have something that you want staff to pull up for the next meeting to address with the board, or hey, we need more information on this project or that project. Can you bring us more information at the next meeting? You don't need a motion to make that direction to staff, right? There can just be a consensus of the board, or it can be the individual will of a board member, because you guys can ask for stuff like that, right? You need that information to make decisions. For approving applications or making recommendations to the city, of course, a motion is going to be appropriate in those instances. Don't ever during a, and you guys do a great job of this as well, try not to talk over each other during meetings, because it becomes very difficult for us and the audience to figure out who's saying what and when. And if we ever do have a hotter issue that comes before the board, or maybe the applicant is thinking they might need to appeal whatever the decision is, there will be a court reporter present. He or she will probably be sitting right over there. And they're going to ask very politely that everyone, speak one at a time, so that they can take down what's being said for the record. So it's good to practice that now, and so we, when we have a bigger item, it's second nature to you guys. Votes, once the motion's complete and there's a second, we call the vote. It's either by roll call or just a voice vote, which is appropriate most of the time. All in favor, all opposed, that sort of thing. So you all are experts at this, so I will fly through this. Amendments to, oh, yes.
Question. You commented previously, you don't go off agenda. You have an agenda and you stay on the topics of the agenda. Then you have public comment, and someone stands up and they make a comment about something that's not on the agenda. What is a tactful way to be able to diffuse that and stay on the agenda?
Yeah, so it's, folks generally get that during public comment, folks could bring up any sort of issue before the board that pertains to planning and zoning. It might not be something on the agenda, but usually boards, it's not really the obligation of the board to respond to public comment. You're merely taking it, and if it brings up an interesting issue that the board wants to pursue, it would be appropriate to direct staff to look into it or bring something up at the next meeting. The staff here is really great, so I'm sure they'd probably reach out to that person individually anyways, but it's sort of assumed that public comment might get a little interesting with what's brought up, and that's fine. The issue would be if the board wanted to recommend a particular ordinance to the city that wasn't on the agenda, wasn't noticed on the agenda. Well, then how would a member of the public know to come to the board to address the board on their thoughts on that particular item if it's not on the agenda, right? Oh, now we're making a formal recommendation to the city council, and well, I didn't get to talk about that. I missed my opportunity to talk to the planning board about it, right? That's more of the issue. And your council comments or board comments at the end, you guys can bring up anything you want. You're not taking formal action right? You might be directing staff to get something or asking about a project, that's all fine. It's just informational. And we record the meetings too, so folks can access those discussions anytime. So we're just worried about things that result in official action being taken. That's what I meant by the agenda thing. So that's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. Amendments to motions, you can always amend a motion for more clarity, or if there's further discussion and you change your mind a little bit, you want to tweak your motion a little bit, that's completely fine. You move to amend the motion. A lot of times, I will feel the discussion closing. I'll feel that there might be an amendment in the works, and I'll solicit it. Oh, would the member like to make an amended motion to reflect what was just discussed? And then an amended motion's made, there's another second, and then a vote can proceed. I try to help you guys sort of get to that point. Questions about confusing motions? If you don't understand what vote is on the floor, raise your hand, call on the chair. Can we pause? I don't know what we're voting on. Make sure to do that before the vote takes place. No one will ever get mad at you for doing that. Generally, particularly on quasi-judicial matters, I will pipe up and I will say, I don't know what the motion is on, so I need to understand it. So can you clarify for my sake or for staff's sake? And a lot of times we'll guide you guys in the right direction. Motion for reconsideration. This happens very, 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 very rarely. Actually had it come up the other day, the city of Rockledge at a CRA meeting. They voted a particular way to continue an item because someone wasn't present, and then the person showed up 5 minutes later because they thought the meeting was 30 minutes later than it really was. Motion to reconsider, the prior tabling so that they could have their item considered during that meeting. That's really only when it's appropriate. I advise against this almost always, except for matters like that, because you don't want to have a decision rendered by the board and then have the applicant leave and have all the interested parties leave. Oh, you know what? Motion to reconsider our prior vote. Let's discuss things that the applicant's not privy to now. Or we can speak freely now, right? And then you change your vote. That's not only a due process issue, but an abuse of what this really is. So very sparingly. Anytime, this is important, not in the context of parliamentary procedure, but it is a due process concern. If you all ever feel the need to table a matter or an application or whatever comes before you, legislative items, it's a lot different because it's the city that's coming before you for legislative items. But for applicants, anytime there's a tabling, it really has to be to a date certain, right? The next meeting, which occurs on April 4th, 2026, right? That way, when you all issue the order, it'll spell out precisely what's going on. That also helps staff because then they don't have to re-notice that particular item publicly again, right? As opposed to not hearing the item that particular date, well, then it has to get re-noticed and published again, and that costs money. So we don't like to spend money if we don't have to. So just keep that in mind. Any questions? I know we went through that quickly, but you guys seem pretty good on process. So.
Yeah, if we wanted to sit through the 4-hour training. I know, it's been a while.
What do you mean, we?
So this actually is not on the 4-hour.
Possibilities,
So this again is just for you guys to help work through the mechanics of getting through the meeting. It really matters a lot when there's tough items before the board because you got a packed house and people are chit-chatting, and it's really good to be sharp and on it and organized. And that helps you guys organize your thoughts too, so you're not thinking of things you shouldn't be right before you make a motion and there's a vote held, and now, I'm worried about the response to the writ of cert I'm gonna have to draft over the weekend, in a couple of weeks. So, it matters a lot, but you guys do a really good job, so good on you for that. All right. So we talked a minute ago, and we had a question from the chair beforehand on what the difference is between, the question wasn't phrased this way, but what's the difference between a legislative hearing and a quasi-judicial hearing. We talked about this. A legislative hearing is you create new law, right? We still have to do that at a notice public meeting, but we're legislators. You guys are thinking about policy determinations. Well, I don't want to have that kind of use next to that kind of use, and I don't think that really fits with, what we should have here in the city of Cocoa Beach. Those sorts of discussions are the hallmark of what a legislative item really are, right? You're thinking about the future. You're thinking about how should we phrase, or how should we define things, or we need to make sure of this or that. That's a legislative matter. Compare that to a quasi-judicial matter, which is where you have a set of standards, you have laws, you have criteria, right, for things like rezonings. An applicant comes with an application. There's a certain set of facts that comes with that. What are you all doing? You all are judges. You're applying the set of facts that are brought to you, and you are impartially applying that to the existing criteria. We're not doing anything new here. We're just applying a set of facts to existing law, all right? That's the distinction. And usually, I tell all of my boards, if you ever wonder whether an item is quasi-judicial or legislative, you can come ask me before the meeting, and I'll tell you. Or you can ask me during the meeting. Thankfully, here at the city, I read a script that will tell you precisely what an item is before we consider it. So we just talked about this, the questions you asked, did a party do something to violate the law, like a code enforcement matter, right? Or does law authorize a party to do what it requests? They want to rezone their property from A to B, does the law allow that to? Did their application meet the criteria, right? Why do we care whether or not something is legislative versus quasi-judicial? You can see some examples of quasi-judicial matters here. And of legislative matters, comp plan amendments, future land use map amendments often come paired with a rezoning request. Interestingly, the comp plan amendment is legislative. You guys can discuss and apply any sorts of reasonings behind what you want to do as long as it's not arbitrary. And the following item, which is the rezoning application, well, that's quasi-judicial. Different standards apply to that. Well, why do we care about the distinction? We care because quasi-judicial proceedings require process, and by that I mean procedural due process, right? It's not the same level as a normal hearing, like if you go down to Viera and you have a hearing before a circuit court judge or a county court judge, but we do have to make sure we do two things. We have to make sure that there's adequate notice provided to the applicant and to any interested parties, and we have to give the applicant an opportunity to be heard. What does that mean? They have to be able to present evidence, cross-examine witnesses, and they have to be informed upon all facts upon which the board acts. And that's why ex parte communications are generally a no-no. We'll talk about that in a minute. Part of making sure that applicants receive adequate due process in quasi-judicial hearings is, it's basically notice and did the board apply the competent substantial evidence that was discussed or offered at the presentation or the hearing to the existing set of facts. If so, it'll be upheld if it ever gets appealed, right? And that's what we care about. We don't want to violate the law. We want to make sure we make good decisions. There's a definition of competent substantial evidence here. I think it's kind of clunky. It's relevant evidence that deals with its facts, really dealing with what's at issue. So facts that deal with any of the stated criteria that you're evaluating against, right? What are the conditions for a rezoning? Or what are the conditions for a site plan approval? Is their applicant sufficient? Did they meet the stated criteria? Go look in the packet. Go look at the application. Question staff. Question the applicant, right? All of that testimony and all of that documentary evidence, that's competent substantial evidence, right? Whether or not, they've been here for 20 years or not is not competent substantial evidence, right? It has nothing to do, it's not relevant to the decision before the board. It's only fact-based testimony that we're considering. The opinion of an expert is competent substantial evidence. Corey and his team and David, they're experts in their field, so courts say they're actually really good to rely on. So the staff packet, the staff recommendation, their evaluation of how things will work if something's approved, right, with traffic or what have you. A lot of people like to bring their traffic expert in to talk about traffic because they're the only people who are qualified to talk about traffic. Compare that to someone off the street who may have lived in Cocoa Beach their whole life and know the traffic patterns better than anyone else. Their opinion, unless they're an expert, unless they have qualifications, will not count as competent substantial evidence in that regard, all right? So the question I always ask myself when I hear discussion back and forth is, is where the board's going? Is the board's decision supported by relevant, fact-based testimony or documentary evidence concerning the request before the board? That's what I think about. So we just talked about this. Documentary evidence, testimony from witnesses, experts, even the applicant. Oftentimes, if there's an expert, like an engineer or traffic analyst in the room who's going to testify, I'll ask them to give their credentials to the board so that they can be certified as an expert, right? They've been doing this for X number of years. They hold these degrees, what have you, certifications. The written report of the local government's professional staff is like the gold standard that courts look to. So really evaluate that and really pick that apart. And hearsay is fine too, right? This isn't like a formal proceeding, so hearsay evidence can be competent substantial evidence as long as it's not the only evidence supporting the decision. But that almost will never be the thing you guys rely on, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Yep. Yeah, so this is the question I get the most. Well, what about, I'll pick on my mom's name. What about Carol, who comes in and she said, well, I've lived here for 35 years and the traffic there is horrible and it's just going to get worse and they're not going to have adequate traffic controls and their site plan doesn't address this and doesn't address that. Well, unless there's something else to support that, maybe a document that they bring in or they hire their own expert to show that the analysis is flawed in some way, lay opinions generally don't count as competent substantial evidence. Right, and sort of the classic example is that, their conjecture that a project would increase crime or that the developer's not going to comply with, some prescription that's in the approval, that's insufficient. That's not going to count. So that's something to keep in mind. Of course, that doesn't stop them from being able to comment on matters. And it's very, very rare when that sort of testimony can be considered to support a approval or denial. And here are the two exceptions. The public is presenting actual and specific facts relevant to the decision rather than just their opinions. The public statement may constitute competent substantial evidence. The second part, and this has actually come up in my practice once where I had to deal with this on an appeal, is where the testimony is regarding subjective matters that don't require expertise, like a development's impact on an area's natural beauty. That might constitute competent substantial evidence if the subject matter is relevant to the legal inquiry. So you still have to plug it in to whatever the criteria is that you're looking at, right? You can't really go beyond that. And this is only for quasi-judicial matters. For legislative matters, you can consider their opinions and conjecture all you want. That's the whole point of legislating. What is the opinion of the people? What do I think's right? This is different. Again, you all are judging a set of facts against established law here, so we can't deviate from that. It's not a popularity contest. The whole room can be screaming at you, doesn't matter. The circuit court judge sitting in an appellate capacity on an appeal won't care how many people are in the room. And it can't be based on the number of people who are at the meeting or sent emails who are for or against the proposal. So really what your job is to take in the evidence from staff, from the applicant, hear public comment, and now you're assigning, you're judging what's more credible than not if there's a difference between staff and the applicant. And, is there competent substantial evidence to make a decision either way? Sometimes you could go either way and it would be legally justified. And that is because that it does not matter if 51% of the evidence supports approval and 49%, would be on the side to disapprove an item. As long as there's some competent substantial evidence to support a decision, it'll be legally upheld if it ever gets appealed. Right? We just need something in the record to justify, to go point to, right? Now, again, very rarely is that the case before this board. You guys typically don't have really crazy items where there's a lot of contention between staff and the applicant. But if you ever have questions during the meeting about a particular item, or, hey, Mr. Attorney, can we consider this as competent substantial evidence? Or, can I assign this weight to that testimony? Those are appropriate questions to ask me. I will never tell you which way to go or what weight to assign. I'll, just give you your options, right? Yes, that could be competent substantial evidence to support, meeting that specific criteria. Or yes, that fact would support a finding that they've met, their application's complete, right? Those are the things we're looking at. All right, so that was a lot. Any questions, any thoughts, any comments? It's getting late, Garrett. Come on, let's get out of here. All right, ex parte communications, what everyone's been looking forward to. What are they? They're communications between a decision maker and another party without the presence or the permission of all other parties to the proceeding. The reason why these are frowned upon is that the law sees them as being presumptively prejudicial. So it could have been a completely innocent conversation, doesn't matter. The law presumes it's prejudicial to the other party. And sometimes we don't know who all the parties are to a quasi-judicial proceeding, because who has standing to contest a matter, it might be more than just the city and the applicant, right? It might be someone who gets a notice who lives within 300 feet of a proposed rezoning, right? It might be another member of the public who has standing. And so that's why it's really hard, even when the city says, oh yeah, it's okay if you talk to their lawyers and whoever, because, well, we don't know who else might show up, right? So that's what they are, and the law, again, finds them to be presumptively prejudicial. So what do we do if we have them? We have to disclose them, right? And so we do that right, not at the beginning of the meeting, because that's really where we're disclosing conflicts. Right when an item is being considered, you would, I'll ask, has anyone had any ex parte communications regarding this matter? People like to say, I drove by the site. That's fantastic. Not an ex parte communication, but, helpful to know. We're really looking for communications between you and the applicant. And what do we need to discuss when we disclose ex parte communications, because that's how you overcome the presumption of prejudice. Really easy, 4 points: identify, summarize, prior to or at the hearing, and it has to be made a part of the record. What are you identifying? The person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place, a brief summary of the subject of the communication, insufficient detail. Usually it's just we talked about the project, or we talked about the parking issue, or we talked about, this. The reason why you have to give a short summary is to allow the aggrieved party an opportunity to cross-examine you. Well, when you say you talked about the parking issue, what did you talk about? Oh, well, I own a paving company, and the applicant told me that to solve their parking issue, they're going to hire my firm to do the paving, right? Well, that's important to know, and we talked about due process earlier. Part of someone's due process rights is knowing all of the facts upon which the commission acts, right? Well, if they know that you're going to get a big contract if this gets approved, and the applicant told you that outside of a meeting, well, they have a right to know that, right? And that's why ex parte communications are, disfavored. So we want to identify who, what we talk about. We have to disclose it prior to or at the quasi-judicial hearing, right when it starts. Let's disclose it, because we're talking about that subject already. It's hard to bring people up and in the messy situations, an hour or two before their item goes before the commission. So I like to do them right at the top of when the item's being discussed. And it'll be made a part of the record. It goes into the minutes, and then that dispels the issue of the prejudice. So I have dealt with ex parte communications before. When our firm was the city attorney for the city of Naples, someone alleged that there were rampant ex parte communications with the developer, which there were, but they were all disclosed. And, we had to go through a lengthy appeal to win that, which we did win. But again, it would have helped if those communications were minimal or didn't occur at all. So it is sometimes okay to, chit chat with folks or get an understanding from folks, but oftentimes it'll be better to ask staff to call the applicant and ask them to supplement their materials with information you think is lacking from their application. That way, it's not you having the communication and it gets in front of the issue of, hey, we don't have enough information to make a decision tonight, right? And you only know that a couple days before the meeting, because that's when you're usually taking a look at your agenda, but that's always where my head goes, right? Well, let's just supplement the record, because we can consider the record during the meeting. And that way everyone has the benefit of getting the information, not just the secondhand information from someone. All right? Last thing before I let everyone go tonight. Donald, he's a member of the city's planning board. During a recent meeting, his board reviewed an application for a rezoning of a property from agriculture to heavy industrial. Staff supported the rezoning, and the applicant presented testimony from a certified planner to discuss the merits of the application. During the presentation, the neighboring property owner objected to the rezoning on the basis that, quote, "The city is simply not the place for this sort of activity. We need to save the trees." There was no other evidence testimony presented at the hearing. Donald, who recently had a fantastic lunch with the applicant to discuss the application in advance of the hearing, shot back at the neighbor and defended the project. Nevertheless, the board denied the application based on the neighbor's testimony. Call it out. What are the issues?
Donald should never have had lunch.
Yeah, so that's an ex parte communication. What would Donald have to do to remove the presumption of prejudice of that lunch conversation?
Disclose it.
What does he got to disclose?
The fact that he met with the applicant
Identify the individual, yep.
and discussed the application.
Yeah, what they talked about, very good. And then who would get to, the neighbor? Would the neighbor get to come up at that point and say, I want to probe you a little more on precisely what you all talked about at this lunch? Absolutely, right? Absolutely.
Seems as though the board threw out the expert testimony of the city in favor of, and they ruled against the applicant, even though the board, the expert witnesses were telling them that they should have been able to.
Yeah, precisely. Look, we've got really three categories, kind of different areas of evidence. We've got staff's recommendation. That goes a long way, right? We have all the facts supporting staff's recommendation. We have an expert, a certified planner who came to discuss the merits of the application, all right? Competent substantial evidence, there and there. Now we have this opinion, we have this conjecture, right? Oh, it's my opinion, the city shouldn't be the place for this activity, we need to save the trees.
Not based on any fact.
Well, we may all agree with that, but at the same time, that's not grounded in fact, it's just an opinion. And so, we have here that there's no other evidence or testimony presented at the hearing, so is there competent substantial evidence to deny the application? No. Right? So this is going to get overturned if it gets appealed.
I was going to say, when did they go to court after this?
Yeah, definitely going to get overturned. There was one other little thing that I tried to write into this. I don't know if I did, but yeah, that's more or less the case. This is sort of, this is all straight from appeals that I've worked on in the past, right? People having lunch to discuss matters, boards relying on the conjecture of one, or it's usually many residents. Sometimes I've sat through planning board meetings where more than 100 people get their 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it's a wonderful time, but it's hard sometimes to parse through what's going on what's, mere conjecture, what's fact-based. So hopefully going through this training in the hypos, when we do have, hot button issues, you all sort of have a toolkit to sort of get through it all. And then if there's ever any questions that you guys have during the meetings, again, I'm never going to tell you what to do, but I can give you your options, or I can reaffirm, hey, Garrett, is that, we just heard from that expert, is that competent substantial evidence to support meeting that specific criteria? Yes, right? And they're a certified expert, unless there's another expert in the room that has a different opinion, well, that's competent substantial evidence too. And then you guys can weigh who you find more credible, what you agree with, right?
Here's the problem I observe we always had. If there's a major project being proposed, every citizen thought it was creating too much traffic. And every developer had hired a consultant to say, no, there's not a problem with the traffic.
Yeah.
Would we consider, as a city, hiring independent traffic consultants to look at it from the city's point of view?
So normally, city staff has enough, it would be legally sufficient for city staff to see whether or not the traffic analysis that's offered by the applicant meets whatever the application requirements of the city is, right? If it's a bare bones traffic analysis that really doesn't address any of the issues the city has, or, because they're lifelong planners, it's what their profession is, well, they'll let you all know that, right? And now you all can weigh that opinion, which is competent substantial evidence, with the opinion of, the applicant. And I don't, it might be possible, but I think cities are getting away from that. A lot of cities are trying to move the cost burden of reviewing development applications onto the applicants. Lots of fee shifting ordinances out there where
There's a built-in conflict of interest when the consultant's being paid by the applicant.
yeah, precisely, but
Actually, in New York, that's de rigueur, where I come from. That's what happens. Our environmental impact statements could be 5 volumes. I mean, they're
Yeah.
like this. But all of the studies, everything is people who are working for the municipality, but being paid by the applicant. And yes, does that make things, I think it makes things murky. Of course it does. But they're just too expensive for the municipality to absorb. They can't do it. I mean, the municipality cannot absorb a $100,000 traffic study on a major development. They just can't do it.
I'll tell you guys, the project of the drift on 520 there, it was built into their DA that we could charge them for other things.
Study, yeah,
And
that's
one of the things we did is we hired a traffic study, our own, and they paid the bill for it because, like you say, we were questioned about the traffic, so we got our own approval.
And a lot of these companies these professionals who do these studies, whether it be stormwater, traffic, anything, they understand that pretty much they work for municipalities, even though they're not paid for it. So they stay on the up and up so that they can continue working for those municipalities.
There are other things to look into, because it's not always just volume of traffic. It's turning maneuvers and things that are really affect traffic in a way more than the volume of the traffic.
And to your point, our study came back and they suggested a different turn pattern.
Yeah.
So
Good.
drift is going to have to change it to what we require.
the important thing to take from all this is that even when there's an expert that comes up with an opinion, scrutinize their work. I mean, you all have experience in these matters, so, use your experience to suss out maybe things that they're overlooking or generalizing, and if they're not really answering your question, correctly, really dig into them. And that's what the hearing process is about. It's about, what are the relevant facts? Did they meet the criteria? And if there's a question between, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, who are you going to assign more credibility to, right? You're the judge. You have to be impartial. You sort of have to remove how you feel about it. You have to put it aside. Whereas in a legislative matter like tonight, how you feel or your opinion on a particular matter matters a good deal, because that's the expertise that the city's soliciting in that hearing, right? We want to know your thoughts on this because we're making a law, we're not applying it to someone, right? If you have a law on the books already and it's a process to rezone, well, they're entitled to go through the application process, right? And if you deny them the due process of that application by not considering the evidence they bring, well, that's a problem, right? They're going to go to court, they're going to win. And just to let you all know, if someone appealed a decision, it wouldn't be from you all. You all make recommendations to the city. It would be, city. There are still many, many cases that will go back to the Planning Board Commission in the statement of facts it's called a petition for writ of certiorari, or writ of cert for short. They'll go back and they'll point out all the deficiencies in the planning board the hearing. And then it's not entirely legally relevant, but it sets the judge up to think, oh man, these people are just going to get railroaded from the start, right?
Here's the other thing that really stuck with me is we don't always get the cooperation of FDOT. Yeah, that's too many cars to be making a left-hand turn without a traffic signal. Well, FDOT said, well, until that occurs, we don't know if that project's going to happen, and we can't justify the expense of a traffic signal to do that, and what do you do?
Yeah, you just gotta, whatever you gotta look at what's before you. You can't consider anything outside of the scope, right? So it's difficult, but you hope that the applicant is savvy enough, to come prepared with responses or, supplementary information. A lot of them will offer to do things to address concerns. Hey, we'll do that extra study when it comes to site plan. I mean, because a lot of times these issues get brought up in the rezoning, which they're really not adequate for.
Well, we never get cooperation from FDOT.
Yeah, I hear you. But just to fill in the picture, if an item ever does get appealed, it goes up to circuit court after about 5 or 6 months. If the applicant, if the petitioner succeeds, the only thing that happens is it comes back down to the city to consider again. That's all. If it gets upheld, it's upheld. So that's how it works. That's why it's important sometimes, not for you all necessarily, but for the commissioners. Even if an item's been done and it's past them, well, if it gets appealed, it might be coming back, right? So don't talk about it with the other commissioners. But that's the presentation tonight. If you guys ever have any questions, just give me a call. If you don't already have my card, I have lots of cards, my number on it. And yeah. So, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yep. All right.
Okay. Moving on to, are there any other staff reports or announcements? No. And then any board reports or announcements? Anything?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody? I did have one or two things. I think we're supposed to have a yearly or an annual report of some sort. So I don't know that we've done that. I haven't seen it. So probably need to look at the annual report from last year or put one together. And since we're now taking on the land management and sustainability, it probably needs to check to make sure that those duties are included in our LDC. Whatever the new ones are, if they're not already. I don't know, it's kind of high level, but whatever their charter says, if we're responsible for it now, it probably needs to be in the duties.
Yeah, I think that's part of the commission to add that, but I'll get all the information I can to you folks.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. All right, meeting adjourned.